Welcome back to Pop Flashback. It's me, Rick Smalls, your host. Tina Boucher is out on assignment, but I'm excited because we're marking a huge anniversary in movies. 50 years of Jaws. Now, we all know and love this classic, right? But what you might not know is all the crazy stuff that happened behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's wild. The production was a total mess, actually. Like, way over schedule.
Oh, really? By how much?
100 days and, like, millions of dollars over budget. You know, back in '74, that was just unheard of.
Wow, 100 days. That's like, what, almost a third of a year longer? What happened?
Well, you got to think about it. They were trying to film out on the open ocean with this 25-foot mechanical shark they nicknamed Bruce, right? And it turns out trying to get this giant mechanical beast to behave in the water, well, it was not easy.
Yeah, that makes sense. But how they get those amazing shark scenes if Bruce was giving them so much trouble?
That's where Spielberg's genius really comes in. He had to find other ways to create suspense without showing the shark all the time. It's like classic Hitchcock, you know, hint at the danger, don't always show it. And let me tell you, it works. Those yellow barrels bobbing on the surface, the underwater shots from the shark's POV, all of it. You know something terrifying is down there, even if you don't actually see it.
Yeah, those underwater POV shots from the shark's perspective, those were so creepy.
Yeah.
You're totally right. Spielberg knows how to build tension. And of course, there's John Williams' score.
There is a creature alive today who has survived millions of years of evolution without change, without passion.
Just those two notes are enough to freak you out.
Absolutely. And the music is so powerful. But Spielberg was really careful about other stuff, too. Like, he didn't use any red in the sets or the costumes, so when you see the blood from the attacks, it's even more shocking.
Wow, that's attention to detail. But the film, it was a huge hit, right, at the box office.
It wasn't just a hit. It was like a phenomenon. It was the highest-grossing film ever until Star Wars came out a few years later. And it totally changed how movies were marketed and released. Back then, studios would usually release a film slowly, city by city, to build excitement. But Universal decided to go big, releasing Jaws on over 450 screens all across North America at the same time. Plus, they spent a ton of money on TV ads, which was pretty new then. It was a risk, but it paid off big time.
That's incredible. So that was basically the start of the summer blockbuster as we know it, right? The big releases, the giant marketing campaigns, everything. Crazy to think it all started with Jaws?
Exactly. But Jaws did more than just change box office numbers and marketing. This movie, it had a huge impact on pop culture, even on how we see sharks.
That's true. Everybody knows that Jaws theme music. And you're right, it definitely changed how people view sharks. I mean, be honest, haven't we all had that moment where we hesitate before jumping into the ocean?
Yeah, probably. But seriously, Jaws really contributed to this image of sharks as, like, these mindless killing machines. It made people scared and even led to some places wanting to kill off sharks, which is just awful.
That's really sad. Sharks are such amazing creatures. They're so important to the ocean's ecosystem.
Absolutely. It's kind of interesting, though. Peter Benchley, the guy who wrote the book Jaws was based on, later said he regretted making sharks look so bad, he even became a big advocate for protecting them.
Well, that's good to hear. So even though it had some unintended negative consequences, Jaws also made people more curious about sharks, which hopefully led to more research and understanding.
Absolutely. And speaking of understanding, there's a lot more to say about Jaws, about how it influenced other filmmakers and its legacy in pop culture. But before we get into that, I want you to think for a minute. What stood out to you so far about how Jaws was made? What surprised you? Or what are you curious to learn more about? You know, it's amazing how a movie about a shark can start so many different conversations.
It really is. One thing that always gets me about Jaws is how it inspired a whole bunch of other creature features and monster movies.
Oh, totally. Jaws, like, set a new standard for special effects and suspense. You can see its influence in so many films, from Alien to Jurassic Park.
Oh, speaking of Jurassic Park, another Spielberg classic, I've heard people compare Jaws to classic books like Moby Dick, too. Do you see any similarities there?
The Moby Dick connection is definitely there, yeah. Especially with Quint, the shark hunter. Like, Quint is so obsessed with catching the shark, it's kind of like Captain Ahab and the white whale, right? They both tap into that fear of the deep ocean and that human need to conquer nature.
That's interesting. Jaws also deals with themes of leadership and responsibility, like with the mayor not wanting to close the beaches, even though there's danger.
Right. It's like Mayor Vaughn is putting the town's money ahead of people's safety. It makes you think about how people in power sometimes make decisions based on what's good for them, not what's good for everyone else. It's something we still see today.
Yeah, for sure. And then you have Chief Brody, who ends up going after the shark, even though he's scared of the water. He's not like some shark expert. He's just a regular guy trying to do what's right.
Exactly. Brody is like the classic American hero, the everyday person who becomes brave when they have to be. He's also the voice of reason, trying to get the mayor to take the threat seriously. It reminds us that sometimes it's the ordinary people who are brave enough to speak up to those in power.
It's amazing how a movie about a shark can have so many different layers, from fear and heroism to that balance between people and nature. No wonder it's still so popular after all these years.
Absolutely. It's entertaining, it's suspenseful, and it makes you think. And we can't forget the funny parts. Jaws has some genuinely funny moments, which I think makes the scary parts even more effective and the characters more relatable.
So true. Who could forget, you're going to need a bigger boat?
You're going to need a bigger boat.
That's a classic line. And speaking of classics, there's the Jaws ride at Universal Studios. It just shows how much impact the movie has had that people still want to experience that thrill.
I know, right? It's pretty cool how a theme park ride can take you back to those feelings and that suspense from a movie you love.
Of course, we can't talk about Jaws without mentioning the sequels. What do you think about them compared to the original?
Well, it's hard for any sequel to be as good as the original Jaws, but I think the sequels have their own place in movie history. Jaws 2 brought back Roy Scheider as Chief Brody, which gave it a connection to the first one. And Jaws 3D tried to use that whole 3D thing that was popular in the early 80s, even though those effects haven't really aged well.
It's interesting how sequels can show what was popular at the time they were made.
Yeah.
They give you a glimpse into what audiences were into back then.
Yeah, that's a good point. And hey, maybe those sequels are special to some people for nostalgic reasons. We all have our own connections to these films, right?
That's true. Nostalgia is a powerful thing. But I think we can all agree that the original Jaws is a true masterpiece. It's a movie that still captures our imaginations and reminds us how powerful storytelling can be.
Absolutely. And it reminds us that a movie can be more than just entertainment. It can make us think, challenge our ideas, and even inspire us to make a difference.
Well said. So as we wrap up our look at Jaws, I have a question for everyone listening. What does this movie mean to you? Is it a favorite from your childhood, an important part of our culture, or maybe it made you fascinated by sharks? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. It's wild to think a movie from 50 years ago can still get people talking like this.
Yeah, it shows you how strong a good story can be. And Jaws had it all, you know? Interesting characters, that amazing suspense, and that primal fear we all have deep down.
It's true. And even though it's just a movie, it really captured something real about how we feel about the ocean.
Yeah.
It's beautiful and mysterious, but it can be dangerous too. And the film got that balance just right.
Right. Jaws reminds us that we're not always on top, you know? There are things out there that are way bigger and stronger than us. It's a little scary, but it's exciting too.
It definitely makes you appreciate the power of the ocean, that's for sure. And it makes you realize how important it is to respect nature and understand where we fit in.
Definitely. We know so much more about sharks now than we did back when Jaws came out. We know they're not those mindless monsters people thought they were. They're actually complex creatures that are super important for keeping our oceans healthy.
It's a good reminder that learning and understanding can help us get over our fears and protect what's important.
Exactly. And it shows how powerful stories can be. They can change how we see things and inspire us to do better.
Well said. Well, I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about today. Any last thoughts you want to leave them with?
You know, if I can kind of zoom out for a second, I think Jaws is really about facing our fears. Whether it's a real shark or any challenge in life, we have the strength to get through it.
That's a great point. Sometimes facing our fears means pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone and dealing with the unknown, just like Chief Brody did.
Exactly. We often grow and learn the most when we step outside of what feels safe.
Well, that's all the time we have for today, folks. Thanks for joining us for this special episode of Pop Flashback celebrating 50 years of Jaws. We hope you enjoyed this look back at this amazing film. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss our next episode, where we'll take a deep dive into another awesome piece of pop culture. Until then, see you later.